2016 was one of the best years for animation. Even with a few poor features like Norm of the North, it still produced some of the most well-made and written animated movies I had seen in a while, bringing up a few more challenging topics than normal and really pushing the artistic feel of the medium that was slowly growing stale and treated as just for children. 2016 reminded me a lot of the 90s, with some of the most iconic works of Disney and Don Bluth having shaped the way we looked at the medium as a whole. So 2016 had a tough act to follow, and with the showcasing of trailers like Boss Baby, Captain Underpants, and, well, the Emoji Movie, it really looked like this year wasn't going to have anything that special. Well, in a sense. But I like to give things a chance before I criticize. So, how has it been? Well, I wasn't wrong. 2017 has to be one of the lamest years of animation. Just bland, boring, predictable, and overall pointless all around. I might as well make 2017 a synonym for all of that. Just about every movie is exactly what I expected of them, so much so that I neglected to even do a proper review for any of them. So I'm gonna give a quick fuzzy thoughts on everything I've watched so far in the theaters, kind of give an idea of just how much of a letdown this has all been. So, here is my thoughts on 2017, so far. Lego Batman was the first animated movie that came out in theaters this year, and it started off the year pretty well. Now, I wasn't too much of a fan of the Lego movie, like many others were, but it was a very well-made work of animation and a really big feat to really pull off. And Lego Batman follows that example. The environments are huge and the designs are very believable that they were all made out of Legos. And as a parody, the writing is humorous and self-referential to the source material. Unfortunately, I didn't really care for it that much. This is a very personal view on the movie's writing and fourth-wall-breaking humor, but Batman's just all over unlikable, and the cast of familiar names are very two-dimensional tropes. This is definitely a movie that rides on the audience knowing the history of its source material. As a parody, it's fine, but it felt very one-note, and it becomes too reliant on pointing out and making the audience aware of just how ridiculous the whole concept is. I'll give Lego Batman a 6 out of 8. I guess it does everything it's aiming for just fine, but it just didn't amuse me as much as other viewers. But I was very impressed with just how much work they put into it. And while I wasn't much of a fan of Lego Batman, I do have to give it this. It's probably one of the best movies of this year. Oh yeah, this is the bar we're setting. This is the definition of a middle-of-the-road movie, with bland, uninspired designs and scenery with no real plot. Nothing really happens in this movie, with moments either being pointless or distracting from the actual story, and any conflict just sort of solves itself or is simply swept under the rug. Characters have very basic personalities and have no further character development. There may be a message of music being from the soul and just a feeling, but what I got from it is, sheep are stupid, wolves are communists, and anyone who has earned a name for themselves are fraudulent dicks who lost touch with their roots. Good message, movie. Oh, and something about sheep powers and his responsibility to defend sheep, but don't worry about that, the movie sort of forgets about it itself. So Bodhi is a young hipster mastiff who is heir to be the next guardian of a dim-witted city of sheep from the jaws of a nearby mafia? Communists? Goodfellows group of wolves, whose father banned music so the inhabitants of the village will stay vigilant. After a radio falls out of the sky and hits him in the head, he for the first time ever hears rock music and wants to be a rock star. After the usual hijinks, Bodhi is given a deal by his father to leave the village and take a shot at being a rock star. And it pretty much just meanders from there for a while till Bodhi meets his idol Scattergood, a pretentious highbrow Beatles-like artist played by Eddie Izzard, who fucking saves this movie. Sure, Scattergood is kind of a manipulative tool throughout the whole film, but Eddie Izzard nails this character and just makes him pop with so much energy and personality. Honestly, you could have made the entire movie about Scattergood getting back to his roots through Bodhi. But no, they just make him seem like a con artist with only an apology to redeem himself. Before Bodhi goes back to the sheep village to fix everything through his magical chi powers he just unlocked through having a good jam session with Scattergood. I'm going to be brutally honest here. Rock Dog so far is the 2017's Norm of the North. Okay. To be fair, it's not as bad or as offensive to the genre of animation as Norm of the North is, but it definitely suffers from many of the same issues, with very uninspired character designs, bland featureless environments, and a simple boring plot and writing, all the shit I already said earlier. And that's the most shocking thing. They made Rock boring. Rock Dog gets a 4 out of 8. Obviously. Boss Baby had to be one of the most hyped animations of this year. Seriously, its advertisements were everywhere, and like most things, it turned into a meme. Of all the movies for DreamWorks to have such pride in, this should not be one of them. It's not as awful or as bland as most of the other movies on this list, but it does feel pretty pointless. So, the plot. Alec Baldwin plays the adult businessman in the body of a baby. And that's basically it. Sure, there's some stuff about puppies getting more love than babies or something like that, but it just feels squeezed in between a juxtaposition humor of a baby acting like an adult and an imaginative kid going through a sort of sibling rivalry. Also, there's the likelihood that this is just taking place in his imagination, but don't pay any mind to that. Speaking of the main character's imagination, the movie is sprinkled with moments that take place solely in his imaginary world, which is creative, vibrant, and interesting. But it constantly pulls us back out into a bland, overly neat-looking reality. As much as we can expect from DreamWorks, the animation is fine, but still comes off as cheap overall. But it does have one great thing about it. Steve Buscemi. Hell, I'll give it a point for that alone. Boss Baby gets a 5 out of 8. They had an interesting idea here, and they did genuinely try. But aside that, it feels like they had nothing to really work with and didn't know where to go with this one gimmick. Smurfs The Lost Village may not be the first Smurfs movie, but it might as well be the only one. I want to be fair, this is a lot better than what we got before. The last two Smurfs movies were the definition of a cash grab, following in the footsteps of Alvin and the Chipmunks and Scooby-Doo, in the idea of just cramming an old IP in and hell, I'm sure we'll sell some toys. And it's always done so poorly with such little thought. Hell, not even Neil Patrick Harris could save the last movie, and he's basically a god. Luckily, Smurfs The Lost Village is an entirely animated movie that really does make an earnest attempt to keep true to the style and feel of the source material, with a few modern tweaks at the very least. The Smurfs, while still playing to specific archetypes, all still have unique personalities to them. The writing and narrative at the least goes somewhere, and Gargamel actually looks like, Gargamel. The only problem is that the plot is very dry and predictable. The plot revolves around Smurfette, the only female in a town of dudes and feeling out of place. But while out in the woods, she runs across a pair of unknown eyes and realizes that there must be other Smurfs out there. From there, she and 3 other Smurfs simply stumble through what is admittedly a very beautiful environment full of strange and enchanting flora and fauna, leading Gargamel to the lost village of Smurfs, which happen to all be female. And no, that's not a spoiler, they gave that away, don't start. Everything ends up going exactly where you expect though. But I have to admit, I am surprised they did not go with the feminist angle with this one. And if they did, it was so neutralized that I barely noticed it. Overall, it's simply by the numbers a decent animated movie. Nothing very deep about it, but its colorful and energetic animation and decent writing will be entertaining to children. And I hate having to say that, but that's what it is. A kids movie. And this is just another example of a studio thinking that's all animation is good for. I give Smurfs The Lost Village 5 out of 8. I already talked about Captain Underpants. It wasn't all that bad, but it felt more like a Nickelodeon animated show rather than a featured film. A little bland, but it all worked out well. 5 out of 8. Moving on. Despicable Me 3 is the shining example of a franchise just getting worn out, old, and tired. Something I would expect from Cars 3. Now, to be fair, this was still a pretty good movie, but it still feels like they just ran out of anything of substance to really do here. Gru and Lucy are sent out to stop once big-time childhood actor gone supervillain Balthazar Brat, who is basically just Vaporwave, the guy, who is easily the best thing about this movie. I'm noticing a lot of that this year. But after failing to stop him from stealing a big-ass diamond, the 2 spies are fired. Gru finds out that he has a twin brother and his father was a world-renowned supervillain. So, wanting to get his job back, he agrees to go on a heist, tricking his brother into helping him steal back the diamond from Balthazar Brat. Despicable Me 3 was pretty good, the animation highly stylized, cartoony, and expressive, but so much of this movie just feels like it doesn't go anywhere, everything coming around full circle to the end, with seemingly little to no growth for the characters and nothing for the audience to really walk away with. Gru is just really in the same spot he was since the end of the first movie. Lucy is trying to be a mother in the most ham-fisted fashion ever, and the girls are just props through the whole film. To its credit, it did try to reduce the presence of the minions, but instead they made them an entire subplot that is constantly cut to as a sort of transition to the main story. And this really has no payoff, as they don't really contribute anything to the story besides distractions from it. I'll give Despicable Me 3 a 6 out of 8. Admittedly, for all of its flaws, it was still a very entertaining experience to watch, even if it was just through a sort of parody jab at the nostalgia of my own generation. Now on to Pixar's first contribution of the year, and true to their reputation is easily the best one so far. Cars has always been Pixar's black sheep series, at least till The Good Dinosaur came around. It wasn't bad, not as bad as Cars 2, which is deservedly Pixar's lowest rated film, for some reason feeling the need to turn a charming Americana film about talking NASCARs into a painfully bland spy movie focusing on the comic relief character as the main star. I just hope any animation studio could take away a few lessons from this. Don't make a movie about the comic relief character. Just don't do it. Oh, God damn it, actually that one's pretty good. Thank God Cars 3 at the very least pulled back on this. Mater's presence is reduced and he's actually enjoyable whenever we do see him. Cars 3 brings us back to Lightning McQueen, one of the quickest rookies gone big league and living it up as the long-time reigning champ. The beginning plays a close parallel to the first film, only with the shoes going on the other foot, as Lightning McQueen is passed up by young newcomer Jackson Storm, the first of a new line of faster, sleeker breed of race car. Making me question more than ever the biology of these cars. This brings McQueen to battle his limitations and face a fear of being washed up and having to retire as more and more of his old racing mates fades from the track. Cars 3 is an example of a series showing its age, in more ways than one, being a sort of Talladega Nights meets Rocky IV, just as animated cars. McQueen faces a harsh reality we all have to battle in our lives. He is slowly on his way to being a vintage icon of a time being passed up by a new age and generation. It's pretty close to coming out at the perfect time, too. 11 years after the first Cars movie, many of the viewers are now adults. While some may have a way to go, I think anyone could take away a decent lesson on how to age with a bit of dignity and pride. It may not have been as loved by everyone else, but I feel like this is an excellent way to end a series like this. Its writing and dialogue is fun and charming, plot insightful and relatable, and I don't even need to praise Pixar's animation. But there is just a little bit that holds it back. At times the story feels painfully padded, and the conflicts that take place are ham-fisted at best and contrived at worst. I'm going to give Cars 3 a 7 out of 8. It's a well-polished piece of work, but it just spends too long spinning its wheels. What a depressing year. Animation has so much potential. We have seen its ability to truly express like no other medium, but to be wasted so badly like this. Sure, we may have some good, decent films, but nothing really shines here, and it's hard to say if anything will. But I just want to see a studio try more than anything else. 2017 has been filled with boring, formulaic cash grabs more than anything. It feels like studios were more inspired by films like Ratchet & Clank and Norm of the North, with that cheap, straight-to-DVD style movie being put into theaters, rather than the artistic approach of movies like Kubo, The Little Prince, or hell, even Wildlife. And anything that is good is just another stepping stone by the numbers attempt. Sure, they're good, but nothing really unique, challenging, or even emotionally moving. But 2017's not over yet. I just wanted to kind of catch up a bit before I started making fuzzy thoughts on a regular basis again. And hey, who knows, maybe something will surprise me. I mean, I still have to watch the Emoji Movie. I mean, it can't possibly be as bad as everyone thinks. Right?